Why is this so slanted? Is this good? Yeah, that's good.
So, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to make sure everyone is in the right spot. If you are in the wrong spot, you will be marked absent and asked to leave. So it's super important that we're in the right spot. So over here in the back, we should have Mesa. In the middle over here, we have Munoz. Up front, we have Coffee. Here we have Tilton and the extra freshman who signed up with a permission slip. In the back, we have Miss Brown. Up here, we have Dr. Hall, Mr. Morales, and Miss Cleveland. If you are in the wrong spot, please move now. You will be asked to leave if you are in the wrong spot. We will be taking attendance. We want to make sure you guys are in the right spot. Everyone good? Okay. Mr. Stanford, you're up here. Did you want to say something really quick? All right, cool. Guys, I am so excited that you all are here today. We have a really special guest, and this is part of something that is going to be going on not just today, but actually for the next week and a half. You'll find out more later, but this is a start of something really, really awesome. Our guest today is named Jessica Peterson, but she, at Edwards Air Force Base, goes by something different. She goes by Sting. That is her call sign because she is a flight test engineer who works with some really awesome planes. She has developed technology that has literally saved lives, and she can fly some of the fastest jets you can imagine. The only thing is, she does not actually take them off or land them. She'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But she is the backseat in those planes. How many of you guys have seen Top Gun before? All right, so if you guys can picture that, you have a pretty good idea of what you are in for. I'm really excited to have her here with us. Before I turn over the mic to her, though, I do want to remind you guys of a few things. You are here, you got to make sure you're respecting a couple things. One, that you're respecting our guest speaker. And that means we're going to go ahead and put the phones away. You will have the opportunity to take a picture with her afterwards. But right now, if you can go ahead and put those phones in your backpack for me, please. Put those away. Second thing, you got to make sure that you are respecting our premises. We have a really awesome theater. Miss Alice does a great job in the back with that. But she does have a couple rules and a couple expectations. One of those is that there's no food or drink in here. And second is that we are going to make sure that when we leave, we take everything with us. We're not leaving any trash or anything like that behind. If we aren't going to be invited back, and that would be really, really sad. So please make sure you guys are taking care of your theater. Please make sure you are taking care of our guest speaker. And let's give it up for Sting as she gets us started.
Flight test engineering. So first, let me give you some of my background. I grew up in the Antelope Valley. Eastside High did not exist when I was growing up out here. What an amazing school you guys had. I went to Quartz Hill Elementary, then Joe Walker Middle School, and Quartz Hill High School. I graduated in 2001. I'm sure that feels like a lifetime ago. You guys weren't even born yet. And after that, I went and got my mechanical engineering degree at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Then I got a master's degree, and a master's degree is where you can really focus on something. So you can decide, oh, I'm really interested in flight controls and how I control a system. And so that's why I went and got my mechanical engineering degree. Concurrently, I started working at Edwards Air Force Base. So how many people out here knew that you can be a civilian, not in the Air Force, and work at an Air Force Base and fly in airplanes? A couple of you. I did not know if that was even a possibility until after I graduated from college. So I am civil service, and I'm not in the military. I wear what you're seeing right here, unless I'm flying. If I'm flying, I wear a flight suit, and I look like I'm in the military. And I've been doing that since 2005. I've had some amazing opportunities, and I'm going to show you kind of what those are. The last thing I want to talk about is test pilot school. So I got to go through test pilot school in 2017, and that's where I learned how to be a flight test engineer. I've flown in 40 different kinds of airplanes. I've gone supersonic, which is faster than the speed of sound. I've gone up to 50,000 feet, which is 9.5 miles above the ground, and I've just been able to do some awesome stuff. So it's been really an amazing ride, an awesome opportunity. I've been pretty fortunate, just kind of right place, right time for a lot of this. So Edwards Air Force Base, who's been out to Edwards before? A couple of you. Hopefully you're going to come out for the air show. I'll talk to you more about this at the end. But Edwards Air Force Base is the home of American Flight Test. It's where we had the first jet airplane that we flew, the first time we broke the sound barrier faster than the speed of sound. We've had many experimental aircraft, and anything new in the Air Force comes from Edwards Air Force Base. So where is Edwards? Well, here's a map. You can kind of see that little dot in California. Zoom in, you can see that it's north of us. Zoom in again, Edwards is in this little gray area that's on Google Maps, and then finally there's a satellite imagery of it. So if you look on the map, do you see that light tan shape on the map? That is a lake bed. So that lake bed, whenever it rains, we get about an inch of water, and that inch of water makes it very, very smooth, and then as it dries, that lake bed becomes harder than concrete, very smooth and harder than concrete. So it's a great place to land airplanes. That's why Edwards is out there. We have 22 different runways, and most of them are on the dirt on these lake beds. And so we'll use them for emergencies, and we'll use them for testing, and so that's why we started with Edwards Air Force Base. The other thing is, what is the Antelope Valley known for? One, wind, and then also very sunny weather, very few clouds, right? It's great for flight tests when you have sunny weather. So that's why we exist. That's why Edwards is out there. All right, so Edwards has a really rich history. One thing I wanted to highlight is Joe Walker and Pete Knight. Who has heard of Joe Walker Middle School? All right, who's heard of Knight High School? Okay, so both of those are named after test pilots. Joe Walker was an X-15 pilot. He was the first man to go to space twice. He went there 2 times in the X-15. And after him, Pete Knight, he took the X-15 to Mach 6.72, which is 6.72 times faster than the speed of sound. And he still holds the world record. No man has gone faster than that. And so both of those, amazing history at Edwards, and we have high schools and middle schools named after them. I work for the operations group. We have a bunch of different airplanes. If you come out to the air show, you'll see them. A couple you can see up here, we have bomber aircraft, cargo aircraft, fighters, trainers, tankers, all of those, and I get to work on those and test the different systems. All right, so let's talk about the history. So the history of Edwards Air Force Base. On October 14th, 1947, which is 75 years ago, we'll be celebrating that next Friday, we broke the sound barrier. So we took an airplane for the first time faster than the speed of sound. We did it at 43,000 feet. And the thing that I like to highlight on this is it was a team. A lot of times we hear about the pilot, Chuck Yeager. Who's heard of Chuck Yeager? A couple of you. So Chuck Yeager was the first man to ever go supersonic. Well, it wasn't just him. There was Lawrence Bell, who was the engineer that owned the company that designed this airplane, and a NASA scientist, NACA was the name of NASA back then, John Stapp. So all of them worked together to make it. All right, I want to show you these pictures because they're really cool looking. So these are called Schlieren Photography. They're photos that NASA has taken, and it is of supersonic flight. So it's a special camera that can see pressure differentials in the air. So it can see where the air is more dense. And so what this shows is as an airplane goes supersonic, it creates these little pressure waves off of the airplane. When those pressure waves come off the airplane and hit the ground, that's when you hear a sonic boom. Who's heard a sonic boom before? A bunch of you, awesome! Because I think we have a supersonic corridor that goes right by you guys. And so when you're hearing that supersonic boom, it is from these waves coming off of the airplane. All right, so as I mentioned, I went through test pilot school. So one of the things that we teach at test pilot school is what happens when your airplane feels that supersonic wave. What does it look like? All right, so you can kind of see here these waves coming off of the back of the airplane. And so as one airplane passes the other, that's where you're going to feel that supersonic wave. I'm going to show you a video of a T-38 flying out front. I'm in the T-38, an F-16 coming forward. And as the F-16 passes, the T-38's wings rock and the F-16 wings rock from that supersonic wave, that sonic boom coming off of the aircraft. All right, so you can see this is a big video of me. You're going to see me looking over to my right-hand side, watching that airplane pass, and you're going to hear on the radio the pilot talking about the pass.
Astronaut 9.
See the rocky rental wings? See our airplane moving?
Yeah, that's cool.
So a test pilot that gets to fly every single day feels a supersonic wave and says, that's cool, right? Pretty neat to see that. And so it's something, you can hear, you can see, you can feel. So as I mentioned, we have supersonic corridors. So at Edwards, this is satellite view of Edwards, we have one location that we can do supersonic flight. And that's so that when we do those booms, they're not too loud over the community. And so this is a picture of it, the Bell X1 Supersonic Corridor, where we do the testing. Do you guys remember what the first airplane was ago, Mach 1.0? The Bell X1, right? And so that's what the corridor is named after. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the automatic collision avoidance system that I have been testing. So what is automatic collision avoidance technology? There's two parts that I'm going to talk about today. The first is the automatic ground collision avoidance system, and that's a system that prevents you from hitting the ground. Now there's a couple reasons that might happen. The pilot might be disoriented, he might pass out, he might be in the weather. There's a lot of different factors. And so this is a computer that'll take control, fly his airplane away from the ground. The other is the automatic air collision avoidance system. This is to prevent two airplanes from hitting each other. Okay, so having a mid-air collision. Both of them are really important. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit seriously about why these systems are so important. We did a study, 1992 to 2004, so a 12-year period. Over that time, the U.S. military lost 86 pilots. 86 pilots died, and that was from either hitting the ground or hitting another airplane. We call it controlled flight in the terrain. It means nothing's wrong with the airplane, nothing is broken. They just pass out, or they don't realize how close they are to the ground. Or midair, they don't realize how close they are to that airplane. So 86 people that aren't alive today because of it. We lost 156 aircraft, so that means that we have a decent number where the pilots ejected and survived. And that cost $3.7 billion to our military. So it's a big deal, right? And so back in the mid-2000s, we were told we need to figure out how to fix this. We need to figure out how we can save these lives and how we can save these aircraft. So we came up with these systems, I'm going to talk about them today, and we projected that over 20 years, once we got this fielded on all of our airplanes, we would save this many pilots by the trend. I'm going to show you today a video of one of the pilots' lives that was saved. So a person that this system saved their life, pretty rewarding. So let's first talk about how the system works. So the design of the system, remember this is a computer. This is a computer taking control away from the pilot. So meaning the pilot is no longer flying the airplane. And you can imagine there was some hesitancy. The pilots were nervous about the computer taking control away from them, right? And so we had to make sure the system was designed to allow for that. So the first number one priority was do no harm. So that means the system can't be so aggressive that it rips the wings off the airplane, or it makes the pilot pass out because they hit their head. So first, do no harm. The second is do not interfere. All right, give me hands again. Who has seen Top Gun Maverick, the most recent one? Okay, so the ones that have seen that movie, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. The ones that haven't, I'll have to show you some pictures. But one of the mission sets of our fighter aircraft is they have to fly very low to the ground. So they fly low and they fly fast. And the reason they do that is it allows them to hide from enemy radar, systems that are on the ground. So that's called terrain masking, and you have to do it 200 to 500 feet above the ground. Do you think that's challenging for a collision avoidance system? Yeah, right? So how do you design a system that allows the pilot to fly really close to the ground, but still preventing him from hitting the mountain? That's the trade space, okay? And the final objective, the third objective, least important, is prevent collisions. So I had to help design, how do we test this, how do we design it to allow this to happen? All right, so you guys are all biomedicals, is that right? Biomedical classes? So before I get into the system, we're going to talk about the pilot physiological aspects, why this is important. So to be in an F-16, there's a couple things I had to do. So the first was go to the altitude chamber. What happens to the amount of oxygen when you go up high in the altitude? Is there more or less oxygen up high?
Less.
Less, that's right, there's a lot less oxygen. How do they keep us safe safe in airplanes so that we have enough oxygen when we fly really high? You guys know? They pressurize the cockpit, and they have more oxygen that's going in there, right? All right, so what happens if you get a crack in your window or the seal is not good? You start losing the oxygen, right? And that can happen. It's actually happened to me 2 times when I've been flying in the airplane. So one of the things that we train to is how do you identify that you don't have enough oxygen? How do you know that you're having those problems? And so they teach us that by putting us in an altitude chamber, and they reduce the amount of oxygen, and you have to say, okay, now I'm starting to feel tingly, or my fingers are blue, and I can tell that something's wrong. And that's how you know to take your mask and put oxygen on. All right, centrifuge. What is a G-force? Does anyone know? Yeah, okay. It's about gravity, yep. So it's the force on your body. So if you've been on a roller coaster, who's been on a roller coaster and felt forces on their body? Yeah, so those are G-forces. And when you're on a roller coaster, you pull anywhere from 3 to 4 Gs, maybe 3 Gs, probably not even 4, and you'll feel that. Has anyone started to feel like a little bit dizzy, or their vision gets a little blacked out when they're on a roller coaster? Yeah, so that happens to our pilots. And you know why that's happening? It's because the blood is rushing from your brain. So you are losing the blood, and it's going down into your feet. All right, so now you guys, I'm going to make you participate with me. We're going to learn how to do a G-strain. So a G-strain is where you keep the blood in your head. And if you want to be really cool, you can do this next time you're on a roller coaster, okay? So what you want to do is you're going to sit there. I want everyone to sit up really tall. And what you're going to focus on is you're going to push all the muscles in your legs, in your buttocks, and in your abs. Push, 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 right? You guys pushing? But you don't want to make that sound because you have to still breathe a little bit. So the breathing sound that you make is you make a K sound. So it sounds like this. You guys ready? Is it silly? All right, so that's what I had to learn how to do, and I'm going to show you some videos of the G-strain and the pilot doing it. And do you know what happens if you don't do a good G-strain? Pass out. Yep. Okay. And then the last thing I had to do was survival training. So what happens if you eject from an airplane? How do you survive that? Parachute, that's right. All right, so let's talk about the automatic ground collision avoidance system. Now you guys are experts in G-straining. You guys can all go out and be fighter pilots. All right, so the automatic ground collision avoidance system is a computer that knows where the airplane is, how that airplane is going to move, and where the ground is. So where the mountains are, where the canyons are, and it makes sure it can do an automatic maneuver. It will come on whenever controlled flight in the terrain is expected. It has saved 12 pilots' lives to date, and I'm going to show you one video of that. So as I mentioned, the F-16 has a low-level mission. So here is a picture showing that little F-16, super close to a mountain. It has to be able to do that, challenging the test, right? So how do we test a system without ever actually having the collision? What happens if the system fails and we're right next to the mountain? No good, right? So as an engineer, we had to figure this out. So what we did is we used a system called a terrain clearance buffer. It's where we fake the computer so it thinks the ground is higher than it actually is. So if the system doesn't activate at the right time, then it'll go ahead and give the pilot time to fly the airplane on his own. This is really important because I'm going to show you a video where the system fails and the pilot has to fly the airplane himself. So all this comes into a test card. You don't need to look at the numbers. The takeaway that I want you to have is there's a whole bunch of different conditions, altitudes, airspeeds, dive angles, and we give that to the pilot to go out and fly. All right, so I'm going to show you a video. Before I show you the video, I want to orient you to where you're looking. So the type of maneuver I'm going to show you, the airplane is starting super high, 44,000 feet, so almost 9 miles above the ground, and he's going to pull inverted and pull the nose low. The video that you're going to see is a heads-up display. It's the information the pilot has, and I'm going to be showing you the video of the heads-up display. What you need to focus on is first the flight path marker. So the flight path marker, right here, that tells you if the airplane's going up or down. So this line that goes across is called the horizon. So if the flight path marker is above the horizon, he's going away from the ground. Below the horizon, going towards the ground. The other thing that you can look at is current G. So current G, that's the amount of force that you're feeling. Right here, in this test point, you're going to see it get up to 6 Gs. So the pilot's going to feel 6 Gs. You'll see his airspeed on the left increasing, and you'll see his altitude on the right decreasing. So he's going to start from level. He's going to roll inverted. He's going to pull the nose low. He's going to be diving towards the ground, and then you're going to see auto GCAS, the computer, start thinking about activating. So these chevrons, here and here, are when the computer starts thinking it needs to activate. And then, when the chevrons come together and make a brake X, auto GCAS is activated, and you'll see the word fly up. You also are going to hear a really loud, solid tone that comes on. Just so you know, the first pilot that we saved, we found out that when he passed out in the airplane and woke up and heard that tone, he thought that he was in his bed hearing his alarm go off. So there's a reason that we do a loud tone, right? Like it hopefully will wake the pilot up as well. And then finally, when the maneuver is done, those brake X's will go away and the airplane will be flying away from the ground. All right, you guys ready to see the video?
Yeah.
All right, here it is. Rolling upside down, pulling nose low, 4 Gs, 5 Gs, 5.5 Gs. So there's GCAS. Now the computer is in control. The pilot's sitting there trusting the computer, and we're testing it to make sure it works right. So one of the things you would hear is the pilot was talking, he was talking to the control room. So we have engineers in the control room that are watching all of those parameters. Okay, so now you've seen a good test point. The system worked, activated when it did, auto GCAS brought the nose up, awesome, we're super happy. All right, you ready to see where engineering really comes in, why we care? So now I'm going to show you a problem. So this is where the computer was not able to handle the information. The system's going to fail, and what you're going to see on the top left is the words no GCAS, meaning the computer gave up. The pilot doesn't even realize it, because he's flying the airplane, he's going super fast, super steep towards the ground, he's not looking at that little place on his heads-up display. The control room notices it, and they say abort, 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 and now the pilot manually has to fly the airplane. And you'll hear, as he's pulling Gs, flying away from the ground, you'll hear him go, no GCAS, because he realizes it. Pulling it slow. I did this to me before too. 1 second. Let me play it again. Pulling it slow. So he's focused on the conditions. Right there, no GCAS. He doesn't notice it. That's the control room.
Altitude.
You hear him saying, no GCAS. He's like pulling Gs while he's trying to do that maneuver. So that's why we have an engineering team. That's why we do the safety planning. That's why we have a control room to prevent those types of things. Because these are new systems. They're going to fail, right? You're testing them. You're trying to find problems. All right, now you guys ready to see a life that's saved? So I'm going to show you, this is real world. We've now finished testing the program. We had fielded it out on our aircraft, and this pilot was out in that G strain that I was showing you how to do. He had a bad G strain, he had a bad day, and he passes out in the airplane. You're going to hear over the radio his wingman, so his wingman in a different airplane, looking at him, screaming towards the ground, and the wingman starts yelling on the radio, to recover, trying to save his life. Auto GCAS activates and flies him away from the ground. Let's watch it. You're going to hear him G-string as well. 8.2 Gs, right here he's passed out. So now he's getting nose slow and really fast.
He'll recover. He'll recover. He'll recover. He'll recover.
So now he's awake.
You get yourself back above the floor.
Yeah, so pretty crazy, right? Like that person's alive today because of this auto GPS system. Thanks. Okay, so we talked about saving lives, we talked about automatic maneuvers, but remember how I said you don't want the system to get in the way? So now I'm going to show you another test point. This is where we're making sure it's nuisance-free. The F-16 has a gun in the front of the airplane, and to point that gun, you have to point the nose of the airplane where you want the bullets to go. So that means you have to take the airplane, point it nose low, and fly right towards the thing on the ground that you want. So this is where it can get really dangerous, but we also have to allow the pilots to be able to do this maneuver without the automatic system activating. So here you're going to see a maneuver. The pilot's going to go down to 90 feet above the ground. Auto GCAS is going to be running in the background. You're going to see chevrons, but it never activates. Let's see what that looks like. On the left-hand side is his heads-up display. The circle is where the bullets would go. He's turning in. He starts at about 900 feet above the ground. You see him driving in 5 degrees nose low, and now you'll see the video of him. See the chevrons? So that's another good test point. System didn't activate, allowed him to do it. So why do we care? So the first time that we put auto GCAS out on the airplanes, the system had been on the airplanes for 2 weeks. We had just put it out there on all the F-16s. We had just finished testing. And there was a squadron of F-16s that were deploying. We call that downrange. So they were going downrange. And a pilot was getting radio calls from Marines and Army that were on the ground, that were getting shot at by the bad guy, and they needed protection. And so this F-16 was trying to protect the Army and the Marines on the ground, and so he's trying to come into strafe, right? Strafe is where you're using the gun. He got target fixation, meaning he is focused very closely on that point, trying to get his nose of his airplane focused perfectly, and didn't realize how close he was to the ground. Auto GCAS activated, and it activated with 0.68 seconds of the point of no return, meaning if it delayed by less than a second, by 0.68 seconds, it would have hit the ground and he would have died. So that's why it's so important that we make it nuisance-free, but also prevent those collisions.
Just text.
All right, so now let's talk about the automatic air collision avoidance system. So automatic ground is actually relatively easy because the ground never moves, right? All you have to think about is where the airplane is and where those mountains are. But preventing 2 airplanes or more from hitting each other becomes very hard because the airplanes are moving. So I'm going to show you another video. So this is an animation of a real-world mishap that happened at Edwards Air Force Base. Back in 1999, this happened where an F-16 was flying. This F-16 turns to avoid some birds. It doesn't realize how close it is to the T-38, and it hits the T-38 with its wing. The pilot and the engineer in the T-38 both died. The F-16 was able to come back. So now we look at how would the automatic air collision avoidance system work. This system would still allow the airplane to turn in, but then at the last second, it activates and turns the airplane away to prevent a collision. So in my job, what was very important is to understand how these mishaps happened and how to make sure we could prevent them. So how does Acas work? So one airplane is flying along and it transmits its position and the types of maneuvers it can do to the other plane. This means that they're cooperative. As it's getting closer to the other airplane, it says, okay, I think I want to go right or down. And the other airplane says which way it wants to go. And then as it gets to the last possible second, it'll decide to the right is best, and they'll do automatic maneuver. So that's how the system works. How do you think we test this system? The problem is you don't want to play bumper cars in the sky, right? You don't want 2 airplanes to actually hit each other. So how do we balance being able to effectively test the system without having a safety issue? We had to develop some test techniques, and we have to have some innovative safety ways of testing. So as an engineer, that's what I have to design. How do I do this test and keep the pilot safe? So the first thing we did is we never trusted the system. We call it the mad scientist. So we don't know what the computer is going to do, and so we said, all right, if we have an airplane up and to the left, another one down and to the right, that's the picture that you see right there. This one that's up and to the left, I never want it to go down or to the right. And this one that's on the bottom, I never want it to go up or to the left. And so that I prevent that type of maneuver from happening. We call those exclusion zones. Now this case that I showed you, this is pretty easy to figure out, right? When I start thinking of all the different ways that airplanes can meet each other, it becomes a lot more complicated. So that's where I had to use geometry and different aspects to figure out how can I do this geometry and keep the airplane safe. The next is we never relied on the system. So do you remember on Auto GCAS, I said how we faked the ground, so it thought the ground was higher? Similar for Auto ACAS, we never wanted the two airplanes to actually be on a collision course. So we would stagger them so that the computer thought they're on the same collision course, but actually they're a little bit apart. So if the system doesn't activate, this airplane will fly right by and it'll be safe. So we call that an altitude split. And then finally, we used a time parameter. So if two airplanes are coming towards each other, how quickly they can hit each other doesn't depend on just the altitude, but also the speed. And so we had to calculate how much time they had before collision. And so we always made sure we had at least 3 seconds, meaning if the system didn't work correctly, the pilot always had 3 seconds to be able to react. All right, all that comes in a test card. Again, as an engineer, this is what I create. So here's the altitude offset that goes through the computer, the altitude split, that's the distance between two airplanes, and the exclusion zone so that the airplanes can't pull into each other. All right, you guys ready to see some videos of what that looks like? Yeah. Okay, so these are going to be some videos. So this first video you're going to look at, this is looking back at the backseater, and you're going to see them turning in another airplane, and as they get close to each other, the computer's going to take control and maneuver the airplanes away. All right, so you see, there's a pilot with his helmet and his mask, looking over. Do you see that little airplane on the bottom? Right there. So that's where the automatic maneuver happens. And these are very quick. These airplanes are coming in very, very quick to each other. The other thing I want you to notice is that the pilot's spending most of his time looking at the other airplane, not looking at a test card, and not looking at their heads-up display. The next video I'm going to show you, this one on the bottom. So these are a video from what the pilot is seeing. So it's some glasses that have a little camera right here. And the thing that I want you to notice is the pilot does not spend very much time looking at his heads-up display, which gives him altitude and airspeed. He's spending most of his time looking at that other airplane to make sure he doesn't hit it. Okay, so look and see how we call it cross-check. Look at his cross-check. He's looking at the other airplane. And you're going to see as he gets closer, he's going to start staring at that airplane, which is good. We want him to do that, staring at that airplane, right? But that's why the engineers are important. So as an engineer, I'm not focusing on the other airplane. I trust the pilot, not the other airplane. I'm focusing on the display, the data, the information to make sure that we're flying it correctly. All right, so now I'm going to show you, this is 5 seconds. It's a 5-second video, and this one test point took us 2 years to plan. Okay, at the end, you're going to hear the pilot say, "That was awesome." And it's because we've done so much time. This is where you see the computer take control and the airplane maneuvers away. I'm going to play it 2 times because it's a lot of stuff. So let's just watch it the first time and see the computer take control and how quickly the airplanes maneuver. So that tone. Okay, so let's go back. And I'm going to show you again. So now, here's the things I want you to look at. So the airplane that's up and to the left, its heads-up display is on the top left. The one that's down and to the right, its heads-up display is on the right-hand side. And so that is where you'll see Auto Acas activate. You see those exclusion zones that we have there and all the parameters that we planned for as engineers. So 2 years of work for 5 seconds. Pretty crazy, right? That's my job. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you, so we talked about being nuisance-free. So nuisance-free means that I have to allow the pilots to do their normal maneuvers, which includes formation flight. So this is where the automatic system doesn't come on, doesn't get in the way, and they normally are flying together. They'll get as close as 30 feet in formation. So let's see what that looks like. See the one airplane coming in, so rejoining, and then he'll slowly move up, and they'll get within 30 feet of each other. I'll tell you, the first time that I flew and saw this, it was crazy to me that airplanes fly this closely together. And this is normal, it happens all the time. Okay. So final thoughts, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our air show and the STEM Expo that we have coming up. So it's been really rewarding working on these programs. You can imagine that meeting pilots' lives that have been saved has been awesome. What's allowed me to do this has been the engineering degrees that I got. So being able to go through and have critical thinking, figure out how a system works, how do I make sure that they're safe, is very important for doing this. I'll tell you right now, growing up in the Antelope Valley, I had no idea that I was going to be working out at Edwards Air Force Base. I had no idea I was going to be flying in fighter jets. It just kind of has happened because I've been out there for 17 years. And what's allowed me to do that is that I've grown where I was planted. So I tell people, do the best that you can wherever you're at. Do the best in your classes, do the best in your sports team, your community involvement. And if you're the superstar that's awesome, then doors are going to open for you. And that's what's happened for me. Not that I'm always awesome, but I've had a lot of opportunities because I've really tried to excel at the opportunities that I've had. All right, so done with this presentation. Now I want to tell you about some exciting stuff that's coming up. So next Wednesday, October 12th, between 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we hopefully, I think it's going to happen, we're going to have up to 7 airplanes, and we're planning on flying over your school. So we're going to have a C-17, which is a big cargo aircraft, and then we're going to have a T-38, F-16, F-22, and F-35. I should be in the T-38, so I'll be waving at you as we fly over. And then NASA is going to have an F-18 and F-15. And so we're going to be flying over, and as those airplanes are flying over, I want you to think about those physiological forces. So I want you to think about the equipment that we're wearing, the helmet and the mask, the G-forces, and the altitude. Now, we're not going to be very high, so we don't have to worry about not having enough oxygen. But all those aspects of your biomedical that you're learning about, how that affects being in the airplane. So that is next Wednesday. And the following thing that I hope that you guys want to come out and do is next Friday we have a STEM Expo at Edwards Air Force Base. So do you guys remember what I said this is the 75th anniversary of? Supersonic flight. So next Friday is the 75th anniversary. We're going to have an F-22 that's going to do a boom of the base. So supersonic, you'll feel a sonic boom. And then we have a ton of different booths. I have a simulator that you can come be a test pilot. You can come be a test engineer, run test cars, and experience what we do at Edwards. We'll have the Thunderbirds out there, and we'll have a bunch of different airplanes on display. So you'll get to really experience and see all the awesome stuff that is out at Edwards. So with that, I'm ready to take any questions that you have. My rule is I have to have at least 5 questions before I'll let you go.
Seems like a good rule. Guys, let's give it up for Jess Peterson. There's something you should know about that field trip before we get to the question and answers. We are so excited to take you guys. But a couple things about that field trip. One, we only have 50 spots, which means there are 300 of you here. Only 50 of you will be able to go, and it's going to be first come, first serve. So you do need to get your parents' permission, and you can turn that into Miss Coffee tomorrow. But you need to have a parent signature, and you can turn it in tomorrow. We'll hand out some of those sheets as you are leaving if you are interested in going. The second thing you should know about that field trip is it will be going until 6 o'clock. Our bus is going to be getting back here at 6 on Friday. So if you have any commitments after school that day, you might not be able to make it. All right, let's go ahead and get some questions. Someone raise your hand and get us started.
What's the lowest you've ever flown to the ground?
The lowest I've ever flown. Okay, so normal flying, we're not allowed to go below 200 feet. We have one maneuver that we do at Edwards. It's called a tower flyby. It's where we specifically are trying to fly by this tower, and we can go down to 100 feet on that. And it's crazy. Like 100 feet above the ground, going 500 miles per hour is amazing and really awesome.
Good question. All right, next question.
Have you yourself ever gotten in like something like when you're testing out the planes, but have you ever experienced anything like that where you've gone wrong?
Things have gone wrong? Yeah, stuff goes wrong. So the one that I had a time where we didn't think the landing gear was going to come down. So if you guys see the airplane land, right, like it extends the landing gear and you have wheels, tires that you have to land on. And so we had a time where we didn't think the landing gear had come down. And so they actually put a NASA airplane up and they had to fly around and said, okay, it looks like your landing gear is okay. We had to come down and land, and the risk was if the landing gear didn't work properly, the airplane would crash onto the ground very fast, and we had to be ready to eject out of the airplane. What I tell people is I have a lot of confidence, I really trust that ejection seat, and I really trust that parachute. So if something goes wrong, all the way down to on the ground, then I'm going to trust that parachute. Luckily, the landing gear was okay, and I didn't have any problems, but that was probably the one that was a little more nerve-wracking, because that one for you.
What's the fastest you ever went?
You know, I should know this. I think that I've gone like Mach 1.8. So the F-16 can go up to Mach 2.05. I've never gone, I don't think I've ever gone above Mach 2. The airplane doesn't really like going that fast. It kind of grumbles and I don't need it. It's an older airplane, but Mach 1.8 I think is the fastest that I've gone, which is pretty awesome.
Did you get to choose the name Sting?
So you don't get to choose your call sign. Usually, they'll do a naming ceremony, and usually they'll give you multiple names, and they find out which one you like, and that's not the one you get. So STING, it stands for Social Talents Induce Noticeable Gains. It's an acronym, and it has to do with some silly things that I've done, and so that's why I got the call sign, STING.
Have you ever passed out?
I have not passed out, but I've gotten very close. So the centrifuge, before you fly in an airplane, they take you to a centrifuge, and you can go on YouTube and type in centrifuge, 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 and you will see it's this big arm, kind of like they have in the fair, and it spins, and it'll take you up to 9 Gs, and they're teaching you how to do a G-strain, and I got very close. And you know how you feel that you're going to get close to passing out? Your vision, so you'll start losing your vision, and you'll start feeling kind of tingly, and the picture of me, I'm going to go back really quick, because I think you guys may or may not have been looking at it. We're going to look at the picture of me in the centrifuge. I want you guys to focus on this and just be like, all right, it makes you look like you're 80 years old. All right. I'm still in isolation. So you guys see me right there? So that's me in the centrifuge. I'm at 8.75 Gs. I'm trying to do my G strain, and those forces like drag your face back, and it's totally miserable. So I got very close to passing out right there, but I didn't. Thank God. If you pass out in the centrifuge, they won't let you fly in fighter jets. So you don't want to pass out. You want to do that G strain really well.
What was like the most scary situation you've been in?
You know, so I would say usually while I'm flying, not usually, always when I'm flying, I'm not scared. You can't be scared, because if you're scared, you're not thinking straight, right? Like, so there's been things that, like I talked about the landing gear, when I've done these test points where we're very close to each other, we're diving towards the ground, you're like hyper-focused. You're focused on what are the conditions, what do I need to do to be safe. Now there's times I've come back and I look back and I'm like, man, that was pretty crazy. Like, you're close to the airplane, close to the ground, my landing gear wouldn't work, you know, so I'm thinking about that. But at the time, you don't feel scared, and it's because you train to it, right? You do the centrifuge, you do the altitude chamber, you develop the test cards, you go to the simulator, you do all the preparation so that when you're in the event, we do emergency procedure training. You think about, what do I do if there's a fire in the cockpit? What do I do if there's some type of failure? So you train to that so that you're not scared, that you can react and be in the moment, keeping yourself safe. Good question. All right, what else?
How many years in college did you do?
So I did my undergrad degree, I took 5 years. It was a 4-year degree, but I took 5 years because I really enjoyed college. And then my master's degree was 1 year, and then I got a second master's degree, which was another year. So what is that, 7 years? I have 7 years of college. Yeah, I like school though, I like learning. It's to learn new stuff, right? What makes you good at my job? What else? Where somebody could, so happy. Where somebody tried to eject, like with a parachute or whatever, and then to eject from the airplane? Yeah. Yeah, so actually I have multiple friends that have ejected from the airplane. So that is, it's, in the F-16, if you lose the engine, if something fails, if there's a fire, we train to eject, right? Because it's a great ejection seat, it's a good parachute. So that definitely, I say I feel safer flying with an airplane with an ejection seat than I feel like flying in a small Cessna civilian airplane. So I trust the ejection seat.
She mentioned at the end, she was asking if you ever have seen someone get stuck in an ejection seat.
Oh, stuck in an ejection seat. No, there's been times where like I've forgotten to unstrap. There's a lot of things that you strap yourself in. There's been times I've like forgotten to unstrap and I'm like trying to get out and I'm like, oh, I'm still stuck. But it's usually self-correcting. You figure out, oh, I need to unbook these things.
How much do you get paid?
How much do I get paid? I'm not going to tell you the exact number, but I will say that engineering is a good paying job. That was one of the reasons I went into engineering is I looked at where would I make the most money out of an undergrad degree. Now I'm like, oh, it's a really rewarding job, but at the time it was the most money. So you can go on, I'll let you do your own search, and you can look to see what starting salary are for engineers and how that goes up. But I get paid well. I would tell you I would make more money if I didn't work for the Air Force. I would make more money working for some of the companies, but then I wouldn't be able to fly in fighter jets. So for me, being able to fly and how rewarding it is to work on these programs is worth not making as much money as like working for Google or something like that.
I know there were a few more hands. We have time for one more question on the mic. However, we are going to leave a little bit of time at the end. So if you have another question that you would like to ask Jess, you can go up afterwards, ask her that question, take a photo with her. We'd love for that to happen. But here's our last question on the mic.
So has there ever been a time that made you want to quit your job?
To quit my job? All the time. That's a good question. You know, there's all these times, I think with any job, with any classes, with any degree, there's times you're going to get frustrated. So there definitely are times that I get frustrated. I'm like, man, why am I doing this? But I would say seeing the lives that have been saved, and being able to like kind of influence people for like big impacts, that is what motivates me. And it's one of the reasons I'm here today, is because I really enjoy talking to the next generation and telling you guys there's awesome stuff. So, all right, well, it's great meeting you guys. I'll be at the STEM Expo on Friday.
Thank you so much for joining us. Guys, as a reminder, you can come meet Jess right up in the front up here. Miss Coffee has the permission slips for the field trip. And so you have time to get out of here and get to class and be able to get one